You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 70. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. My guest today is what I call a necessary evil because she's someone most of us avoid talking to simply because what she does can bring up all kinds of emotions and entails a ton of decision making. Pamela Maass is an estate planning attorney who is the law mother. Pam is helping women and men, business owners, and basically everyone and their mother who lives in Colorado get their affairs in order. This is important stuff, and for one reason or another, there are a lot of us, myself included, who put off creating a will, a trust, or an estate plan. And yet, if something happens to any of us without one, our wishes, wants, and hopes for not only our assets, but our children and our own well-being will be decided by someone that isn't us, most likely a complete stranger. Pam is breaking down for us what the difference is between all of these things and not only giving us the tools to get started, but also a referral on who can help each and every one of us no matter what state we live in. Also, if the name Law Mother didn't give it away, Pam recently became a first-time mom, and her little sweetness makes special appearances in her videos. She's also taking us down the path that led her to estate planning law, and as the story goes for most of us, it wasn't a direct one. Take some notes, friends, because I truly believe this is a topic we should all take to heart and plan for. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Michelle.
I am so, happy and nervous to talk to you because I need to talk to you. And I have a feeling many others do too.
You are not alone with those feelings, for sure. Lawyers, sometimes people do not want to talk to a lawyer. Right?
I'm a big fan of lawyers. I've got my degrees in law, but so I appreciate what you do. And I know that it's a necessary, let's call it an evil. Can you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody, please?
Yeah, I'm Pamela Maass. I'm an estate planning attorney, and I'm the owner of a mom-owned law firm called Law Mother. And I'm also a host of a podcast called the Working Moms Podcast.
So what is it that you're doing for these women, these mothers? How can you help us?
Yeah, so at my firm, I do estate planning and legacy planning. So wills, trusts, kids protection planning. And through my podcast, I am just really trying to create a platform for women and mothers to come together and share their stories and resources.
And I've noticed that, at least since I've been in this space, I was in the corporate world for 18 years. And now that I'm in the online space, there seems to be more and more, not just women, but moms who are creating businesses. And I would bet that most of them, like myself, don't have in place what we need, whether it's in regards to our business, our kids, all of that stuff. So where do we even begin?
Yeah, so I have kind of a few tips that I would say with regard to estate and legacy planning. And the first tip I always share is naming legal guardians if you're a parent. So naming short-term guardians and long-term guardians for your children. And short-term guardians are, people that live close by in your close area. So they might be neighbors or friends. But if there was some type of emergency and you're in an accident or someone wasn't able to get a hold of you, these people would have the legal authority to make your kids safe. And the reason you want to have that in place is if you don't have it in place, then your children could end up in child protective services or foster care. And then long-term guardians are the people that you would want to raise your kids if you could not. And so really, if you don't put a plan in place, then if something were to happen, God forbid, then a stranger, a judge, is essentially going to make that decision for you. And we all know that they might make a decision that isn't something that you would specifically want.
I'd never even heard of the short-term guardian. So that's amazing. I'm already learning. We're 3 minutes in and I'm already learning something.
Yeah. And I always do emergency wallet ID cards. So, and you can create one yourself. We always do it for our clients, but in an emergency, first responders are going to look in your wallet and see what's in there. And if you have a wallet ID card that has your guardian's names and phone numbers, then they're going to reach down and call those people if something were to happen.
Another great idea. I'm loving this. Why didn't I find you sooner? I'm going to make my husband listen to this episode.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So now we've covered our kids. What else do we need for an estate planning? And what's the difference? Maybe I'm just going to give you so many and you're going to go, stop, that's too many things. The living will, living trust, estate plan, are these all the same or are they all different?
Yeah, so they're different. So, a living trust is kind of like a substitute for a will, but it does some things that a will does not. So when I'm kind of telling people the difference between a living trust and a will only comes in effect when you pass away, whereas a living trust comes in effect when you're alive. And because of that, it can protect you if you're ever disabled, and it transfers things when something happens to you. Wills go through probate, whereas living trusts do not. So they go through private process. And living trusts also protect you from that probate process, which is costly. It's usually 5 to 9% of your estate. Usually takes between 9 months and 2 years. So, and then a living will is an advanced healthcare directive. So that's for your health choices. And in most states, they're either called a living will or an advanced healthcare directive. And those are the wishes as far as what specifically, if you would want to be on life support and for how long. And kind of the biggest example of this going wrong is the Terry Schiavo case from when we were growing up in the 90s. And that, if you're not familiar with that case, it was really tragic, but essentially her husband wanted to take her off life support. Her parents wanted to keep her on. The doctors were saying that she was in a vegetative state. She was never going to recover. And this poor woman, for 15 years, her feeding tube was taken in and out. It was all over the news. It became a big political issue. It was just a really tragic thing for this poor woman and that family.
So it's kind of like, why would you even have a will when you could do so much more things with a living trust?
Yeah. And so that was my second tip, is don't leave money to your loved ones outright or in a will. It's to put it in a living trust. And that's some of the reasons we talked about. If you leave it to them outright, it opens them up to, creditors, if they go through a divorce, if they're ever sued, if there's financial irresponsibility, and then the probate process when you have it in a will as well. So that was the second tip. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, in some states, some people do a will if they have, under a certain amount of assets. So here in Colorado, if you have under 75,000 in assets, it's a more expedited probate. So some people might do a will just for that reason. But for people who own their own home, have retirement accounts, life insurance accounts, you're really going to get a lot more for your money if you put things in a living trust.
We have so much work to do, but why do you think people put it off? Because I feel like maybe it's because we don't want to deal with it because it's a lot. It seems like it's a lot of work to deal with. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. As far as kind of putting it off, estate planning tends to be one of those things people put off until it's too late, right? And then you don't have it when you need it. But yeah, I think there's this myth that estate planning is only for the elderly, and it really is not, right? That type of that doesn't really serve the general population who needs it sooner, and really having that peace of mind now. So I always tell my clients, it's one of those things that it's really a plan for life and not death, because once you put it in place, then you get to enjoy that peace of mind now, knowing that if something were to happen to you and your spouse, that your kids are fully protected, that your business is fully protected, and that if something was to happen to you and you're to become disabled, which the reality is the vast majority of us will become disabled at some point in our lifetime, then you have your choices honored. And it's much more about choices being honored than it is about specific money. But asset protection is a big part of it.
And how does having a business come into play with all of this? My husband, he works on the corporate side, but I have my own business, obviously. So is there a difference in the way you create the estate plan versus if you were just a corporate worker?
Yeah. So if you are a business owner, the first thing I always ask is, what would happen to your business if something were to happen to you today? And most business owners don't know the answer to that question, right? And the reality is if something were to happen to you today, your business would end up in probate, most likely. And so you want to look at your operating agreement. And if your operating agreement or your corporate documents does not say what would happen to your plan, if your business, if you were to become disabled or pass away, then you're leaving your loved ones with a real mess. So, it's just something in addition, right? So every estate plan is really designed custom for you. And if you're a business owner, you want to make sure that your business documents have a plan for what happens to you and that your estate planning documents have a plan for what would happen to your business as well. And then I always recommend that people look into specific insurances as business owners. So, all the usual suspects of protecting the business, but then you can also get key person insurance if you are in a partnership with someone else for your business. It's a really good tool.
And how long does it take to really put an estate plan together, on average? Because I'm sure it's different, depending on what your assets look like and, if you have kids or don't have kids. What would be a kind of timeline or, from when they meet you to actually having a plan in place? What does that look like?
Yeah. So my process is, we get a plan in place within 4 to 5 weeks. And then we have a final meeting 4 weeks after that. So it's about an 8-week total process, but they're fully protected at about the halfway point. I would say that's pretty average. I have heard some horror stories of people who, their company may offer some like prepaid legal services and they're on like a 1-year process to get a really basic will in place. So if you are shopping around and you're speaking with other attorneys, you definitely want to make sure it's someone that is going to be responsive and get something together for you in a reasonable time. And I think, the 4 to 8 weeks is a pretty reasonable time.
And do you need to use someone that's in your state, or could listeners, come to you being based in Colorado?
Yeah. So you want to work with someone that's based in the state that you reside in. So I'm only licensed in Colorado, so I can only help your Colorado.
Thanks for that. Thanks for all the great info. And now I can't work with you.
But I am part of a network of attorneys that practice the same way as me at personalfamilylawyer.com. And so there's attorneys all across the US who are really similar to how I practice. I actually, refer my clients all the time and vice versa. And we all have the same kind of values and approach. But yeah, when you want to ultimately build a plan for the state that you're in, if you end up moving, the plan that you create will be recognized in other states. But you're still going to want it reviewed by the state you move to because there are some nuances in certain states and you just want to make sure you're fully covered. So I always recommend that you check with someone locally and have them review it and make sure you don't need like a small addendum.
Now, how did you get into this? So I wanted to be an attorney since I was 5. And in college, I was a law major. I've got my master's in law because I started law school and then babies. And so I just said, forget it. Kids are my priority. And I'll go down that route. And that's how I ended up getting my master's. But how did you decide you wanted to be an attorney? You wanted to focus on estate planning, and then you wanted to focus on moms.
Yeah. So as far as kind of being a lawyer, growing up, I'm the only lawyer in my family. So I actually kind of originally followed my father's footsteps and studied engineering. And that was my original job out of college. I got an engineering degree and worked as an engineer. But I had always had an interest in law since I was younger. It sounds like similar to you. And my high school had a mock trial program, and we had some criminal and civil law classes, and that just really sparked the interest for me. I used to always joke that I probably watched a little too much Law and Order in my teenage years. And so I worked as an engineer and then decided to go to law school. And, when I graduated from law school, I worked so all my internships were originally in patent law, which I found mind-numbingly boring. And so then I took an internship at the DA's office and loved it. And so I was kind of the DA track in law school. And my first job was as a deputy district attorney out of law school. And I loved it. I did over 40 jury trials. And I saw this real pattern where, the unexpected would happen, whether it be an accident or some type of crime. And then I would see families stuck in probate court. I would see kids getting caught up in the foster care system. So I really wanted to do something proactive and really go into private practice and serve families. And I worked for a firm, did some litigation, and then eventually kind of got into doing estate planning, really with the goal of helping people plan in a way to keep their loved ones out of litigation.
And then how about your focus with being a mom? I know you're a mom now. So when did that come into play?
Yeah. So I actually, when I launched my firm, it was Maass Law, which is my last name. And then with the birth of my daughter this year, I kind of rebranded to Law Mother, and with kind of the launch of the podcast, and really wanting to take a stand for mothers. And, obviously I serve families. So I always, I'm not just serving the mom, I'm always serving parents, but really just wanting to take a stand for moms and give resources and create a community. And the name Law Mother was for that. And I'm expanding my team and hiring additional attorneys and paralegals in the next year. And I really wanted a brand that could really encompass a bigger vision beyond me.
I love that. And I love that in a lot of your videos, I see your little girl. She's adorable.
Thanks. Originally, some of my videos, I'm not planning to have her on. And then she starts fussing in the background. I'm like, guess who's going to be on this video? So I'm sure people are like, why does she make her daughter be in these videos? But it's really one of those things where I only have a few minutes to record something. And if she wants to be held, she's going to be held.
So how has being a mother now changed all of this for you? Because I know for me, especially I went from corporate to, being a business owner and having kids. There was something that changed and clicked in me, and just it's that whole mama bear, I'll do whatever it takes kind of thing happened. What was different for you when you had your daughter?
Yeah. So I launched my business with the goal of getting pregnant. So we, really one of the motivators for me launching my firm is so that I could have more work-life balance. And I feel like the legal field in general, we're pretty notorious for really kind of burnout being a badge of honor and working people to the bone. And so, I really, when I started my firm, wanted to have that freedom that being a business owner creates. And then, so my firm had been doing really great. Things had been growing. And then I found out I was pregnant, which was amazing. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to shift everything. So it was like an initial panic because I had, so many, in the beginning, I was getting a lot of my clients from live events, and I had myself booked out for live events for the next 6 months. And that was my whole marketing strategy. And so moving everything to online, I had just hired another full-time employee, and I was nervous about, feeding another person during this.
Yeah.
And was really worried. And luckily, I have a lot of great mentors and support, and really just dove in, when I was pregnant. And I'm like, our plan was for my husband to take at least a year off to be home with our baby so that I could run the firm and it could support us. And so I just really dug deep and leaned in and just worked as hard as I could to keep things running and keep people served. And, to my great surprise, being a smaller firm, I'm able to be a little more nimble, I guess, and make shifts quicker. And so really moved everything online right away, switched everything to webinars right away. And and then had my highest earning month in April after the pandemic. So all that fear, as as a business owner, you get it. And then, you can be surprised. And so I have been lucky that I have been in a industry where the pandemic has actually, not wrecked us. And people right now more than ever see the value of putting an estate plan in place.
Well, and I think it's so great that because of the pandemic, people are now understanding that more and more can just be done online.
Yes.
And especially even estate planning, I would assume we'd do like a Zoom and we'd meet each other and I can give you documents. It's all online. It in the end, it saves time, which saves money.
Oh yeah. Like I meet with all of my clients via Zoom. We ship them their documents or courier them to them. And then we have a notary come to their house. We, if they want the notary outside their house, will you do it that way too? And yeah, it's worked out really well. And it's been such a blessing both for my maternity time and also with a newborn to be able to, pop off, go play with my daughter, talk to my husband, and then pop back on and not spend so much time driving places. And also Zoom is a little more forgiving.
Yeah. I totally hear. I'm like, it's just on top that counts. I don't have to worry if I'm in leggings or sweatpants on the bottom.
Right? Which is very important for fourth trimester. I will say that.
I remember the days.
Yeah.
And it is nice to spend that extra quality time. It's funny. My son, he started distance learning kindergarten, and I have such a hands-on to know exactly what he's learning every single day that I wouldn't otherwise.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's been so nice just to have the quality time. And I mean, I do miss, we've been pretty much quarantined since February.
So have we. Yeah, March 13th.
And I mean, I do miss the interaction, but there are some blessings for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you have the most valuable information, and this is something that's necessary that we all really need. And you're going to put the kick in my butt to get it done because it's been on our list. And my husband and I'll sit around and we'll be watching movies like, we still haven't done it. I'm like, I know. So now what? So you have the resource so people can find, people within their state, and they can reach out to you and listen to your podcast. Can you share how they can find you on all of that?
Yeah. So I actually have a web link called freelegaltool.com where people can name legal guardians for free. It walks you through that process. And
that's
also
amazing.
links you to attorneys. And then you can find that on my website as well, lawmother.com. And my podcast is on there as well. And then on Instagram, I'm lawmotherco.
I love it. Thank you so much. You've schooled me. I appreciate that. And so I'm sure there are others out there who are nodding their heads along with me.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great.
I don't know about you, but I absolutely learned a ton from talking to Pam, and she really lit a fire under my rear to get going. The simple things of naming short and long-term guardians that you can do for free are truly a no-brainer. Friends, let's prepare not only for our future, but for the futures of our tiny humans. Let's make the hard decisions for them to ensure that what we want will happen and that we save our loved ones the heartache of having to make such decisions during such a difficult time. You are in charge of your future, and this is one giant way to really take control. Until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy.